Irish whiskey is growing in popularity around the world, and maybe that's down to the fact that Irish whiskey is typically softer, smoother, sweeter, and easy to enjoy, or maybe it's because a couple of big name brands are putting in a lot of work to get Irish whiskey to that range where it is popular around the world. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and I'm talking today about the 5 most popular Irish whiskies that are sold in America, because I recently saw an article on the top 5 most popular Irish whiskey brands in America, and actually surprised me because for me, a self-appointed whiskey nerd, I'm focused on some of those rare unicorn fancy bottles, and it surprised me to see the scale of Irish whiskey that's sold in America and the kind of big name brands that are really leading the charge. But first off, I don't have any whiskey in front of me, so I'm going to talk about this brand right here. This is Redbreast. Specifically, this is the 12-year-old cask strength Redbreast, because Redbreast, as a brand, is the 5th most popular Irish whiskey sold in America. A lot of that was probably the standard 12-year-old Redbreast, but this cask strength Redbreast is absolutely a fantastic whiskey, really full flavored and really fantastic kind of introduction to the higher end of Irish whiskey sold in America. They sell about 56,000 cases of Redbreast whiskey across the Redbreast, the cask strength, the Lustow edition, the 27, the 15, the 18-year-old, all those whiskies. They sell about 56,000 cases of that a year, and that's about a case is like 9 litres of whiskey. So that could be for Irish whiskey like 12 700ml bottles, but generally speaking about, between 9 and 12 bottles depending on the size, the shape. But 56,000 cases. That, however, is a tiny amount of the Irish whiskey sold in America, because there's about 5.1 million cases of Irish whiskey sold in America every year, which means Redbreast, despite being number 5 on the list, is actually coming in at just over 1% of all Irish whiskey sold in America. I mean, it's a fantastic whiskey, it's really good, really tasty, but it is on that kind of more premium scale. It is that kind of whiskey that people will have maybe at Christmas or Thanksgiving or those kind of special occasions when you really want a whiskey that you can enjoy. It just gives you this really fantastic, full flavored, full bodied experience. This is the cask strength, coming in at 58.1% alcohol by volume, so like 116 proof thereabouts. Really good whiskey, and I can see why it is, despite only being 1% of all Irish whiskey sold in America, it's a very popular brand. Like, this is the most popular of the kind of premium whiskies on the list, because the rest of the whiskies on the list are going to be a little bit less fancy. Because the next brand we have is not like a bad whiskey brand, it's Bushmills. This is their entry-level white label, white Bushmills, and Bushmills is by no means a not fancy brand. They have got some very, very expensive high-end cask strength collections that are really unique and special and different, but they also have basic entry-level whiskies. Like this here goes for about the same price as like a Jameson or something like that. They sell, I think, about 185,000 cases a year, so like more than 3 times as much of this, but 3.5% of all Irish whiskey sold is from the Bushmills portfolio, whether that's this white label, the black label, the red label. They've got some age statement single malts, and Bushmills is one of those whiskey brands that is quite nice. It can be a little divisive because their malt is quite fruity and funky, and it's a little bit interesting, a little bit different. If you like it, you really like it. If you don't like it, you really don't like it. Now, I think most people are on the side of liking it as opposed to not liking it, but it is a very kind of interesting brand. I think of the basic entry-level whiskies, the white label isn't as good as some of the other labels, but when you go up to the black label, the Black Bush from Bushmills, that's a really nice whiskey. So they have got some fantastic whiskies in their portfolio, and no surprise, it is the 4th most popular Irish whiskey sold in America. And for our 3rd most popular whiskey that's Irish whiskey sold in America, I don't actually have a bottle of it at the moment, I don't have it anymore. It's Proper 12. I'll put a picture of Proper 12 up there, you know what it is. It's the whiskey that was founded, the whiskey brand that was founded by Conor McGregor. It's actually coming from the same distillery as Bushmills. It's actually coming from Bushmills. It's basically the same whiskey, maybe a little bit less complicated, maybe a little bit less aged, maybe a different makeup of the blend between malt and grain, but it's basically Bushmills that's been restocked or cast or redone in a slightly different way, maybe just put in different bottles. Like I said, it was the brand that was kind of founded by Conor McGregor, so it's got a lot of publicity and marketing behind it. It sells about 309,000 cases, so about 6% thereabouts. So it's again about twice as popular as Bushmills, but it is Bushmills whiskey, so I think it is all about that marketing. When we reviewed that whiskey a couple months back, we found it to be kind of boring, kind of plain, very, very easy to drink though. So like, it's one of those whiskeys I can imagine at a college bar or at a party, someone can pour out shots of it, people can take shots of it, and it goes away and it's fine because it doesn't have any burn, doesn't have any real weight or anything to it. It's also not the most exciting of whiskey. So when I had that bottle here, we did a little review of it and I said, Grant, I'm just going to pour it into highballs, put it into cocktails, things where I didn't need the whiskey to shine through. I just wanted to kind of a basic whiskey flavor, and that's what that whiskey delivers. It is a basic kind of boring Irish whiskey, but because of the celebrity prestige around it, it is quite popular. But for me, my money is always going to be on those better whiskies like this one right here. For our next whiskey, our second most popular Irish whiskey brand, this here, Tullamore Dew. It comes in at I think 317,000 cases a year, so about 6.2% of all Irish whiskey sold in America. So it's only a little bit more popular than Conor McGregor's Proper 12, and maybe next year, the year after, it'll go down. Those two brands might swap because of just the marketing machine behind Proper 12. But Tullamore Dew is a really nice little Irish whiskey. You can see this bottle is almost empty. I'll probably replace it. It's an easygoing Irish whiskey, but where Proper 12 is boring and not complicated, this is a little bit more complex. Again, it doesn't have any fancy casks to it, but it's the blend. So this here uses grain whiskey, malt whiskey, and pot still Irish whiskey. So it uses kind of all the three kind of main styles of Irish whiskey. So you got here, it's just malt and grain whiskey. Here is pure pot still. This here has all three styles mixed together. So you give it, again, kind of nice flavor, kind of full body, a bit more weight to it, a bit more kind of substance to it. It also has, I think they rebranded recently, like it has I'll see if I can put a picture of the new rebranding there. It has like a dog on it, it just stands out a little bit more. I think the writing is a different color just to stand out a little bit more, but they kept the kind of square bottle to keep it like within the consistent branding. But just a nice whiskey brand that's been doing a lot of work. Again, they have age statements. They have ones that were finished in like wine casks, in cider casks. They've one that was finished in a Caribbean rum cask that was really nice. I make like a whiskey daiquiri with it. Really, really fun, really, really tasty. But Tullamore Dew is one of those brands that have been working way quietly in the background as there's an alternative to, I won't say it yet, but the big name brand that everyone knows. It's working away as like an alternative to that whiskey brand, and it is a solid choice if you are familiar with that brand and you want to move on to something else. And as to what that big name brand is, well, it can only be Jameson. Jameson is the best-selling Irish whiskey in the world, best-selling Irish whiskey in America, in Ireland, and anywhere around the world. They sell, I think, 3.94 million cases of Jameson Irish whiskey in America. That's about 77% of the total sales. So almost 80 times as much as Redbreast. And remember, Redbreast is only 1%, Bushmills is about 3%, Conor McGregor's whiskey Proper 12 is about 6%, again 6% here. So you're talking about a massive step up. It's more than 10 times, like almost 12 times more popular than the Tullamore Dew, but just massive machine. It is classic. And again, Jameson does have a wide portfolio. They've got age statements, they've got ones like the Black Barrel, they've got the Crested Jameson, they've got their own single pot still. It is that kind of big brand, but again, I think the most popular whiskey is going to be their simple, classic, easygoing blend. It's a blend of grain and pot still Irish whiskies. Has a little bit of sherry component aging in it, so it has a bit of fruitiness, a bit of sweetness, a little bit of spice, and it's very easy to drink. Comes in at 40%, and it's one of those Irish whiskies that's generally everyone's first introduction to Irish whiskey. So it's one of those brands that's like, oh, give me an Irish whiskey, you'll try Jameson first, and then if you like it, you might move on to like the Redbreasts or the Green Spots or things like that. Or if you don't like it, you say, well, I'll try something else. So Jameson is always that kind of first introduction, that foot in the door of Irish whiskey. It's one of those whiskies that's really easy to mix. Again, coming in at 40%, but it isn't bland, it isn't boring, it has a good bit of flavour to it. So bars will often say if you're having a whiskey and ginger ale, you might use a Jameson and ginger ale. Put it into a cocktail, you can do that as well. Nice, easy to mix, and just kind of does fill out the massive amount of Irish whiskey. I mean, the green bottle, I mean, look, we've got a green bottle here, but this is kind of the bottle green bottle. It is that eye-catching, distinctive Irish whiskey brand. But between all these and the one that's missing there, this accounts for about 94% of all Irish whiskey sold in America. So the whiskey is coming from Culloden, the whiskey's coming from Two Stacks, from Waterford, from like all these really nice brands are doing a lot of really fun things. They only make up about 6% of what remains of the total sales, only about 300,000 cases of Irish whiskey. If you have a favorite Irish whiskey brand that's not covered in here, it's in those 6%. And let me know down below what your favorite is and kind of ways that you like to enjoy that whiskey. Is it a easygoing brand that you just kind of put into a cocktail, or is it something a bit fancier that you like to enjoy by itself? If you want to read that article, I'll put a link down below to the article which talked about the most popular Irish whiskies in the world. But me, I've got a very nice Irish whiskey that is very popular and is very tasty, so I'm going to keep on enjoying it, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.